Hi, everyone. Welcome to College Football on Tap, brought to you by On Tap Sportsnet. I'm Bruno Ogier, and today, as you see, we don't have the Gerbs here with us. The Gerbs is sitting there making money for little Jackson, the new baby Sloan. Took some overtime this week, so we kind of had a little bit of a change around. But we do have Ross Baran here, a good buddy of mine from the NIU days and NIU alum here on NIU Homecoming Day. So NIU. Ross isn't here in Illinois anymore. He's in New York, but welcome, Ross. Thank you for joining me so that I didn't have to kind of do this by myself here today. It'd be rough talking to myself for a while.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Happy to be on and talk. And, let's just talk some football.
Yeah. Well, once again, I do appreciate you coming on. But yeah, we'll get right into it. Last night was wild already. Thursday was wild. We've already had two crazy games, and they were two major games on the slate out of both days. Yesterday, we had Colorado face off versus Stanford, and Stanford pulls off a crazy double overtime upset. I actually did stay up and watch this whole game. I'm a little tired and hungover right now because I did stay up, but Colorado was up 29-0 when I left the bowling alley last night, and me and my fiance were playing Mario Party, and I was sitting there and I put it on my phone because I'm like, oh, 29-19, what the heck happened here? Stanford's back in the game. And then it just got crazy from there.
No, I honestly feel the exact same way. I had my son with me this weekend. We went to bed, and because obviously the score, you look at that score and you're like, all right, like, we can call it a night early. Both had a long day. Woke up this morning and went, oh my God, what happened?
Yeah. Colorado really just didn't have a great second half in terms of their offense controlling the football. I mean, they weren't turning the ball over. They had no fumbles. They had no interceptions until the double overtime. Shadir Sanders had a great game. He threw for, I think, like 500 something yards total, or 400 yards exactly, and 5 touchdowns. I meant. And then Ashton Daniels, the quarterback for Stanford, all of a sudden just had a crazy second half, went off. Stanford was in the game. The defense came up with big plays late, but big thing here is, Coach Prime and Colorado going down, losing game they were leading 29-0. I mean,
so I guess this leads me into, do you believe in the Coach Prime hype?
Oh, yeah, absolutely do. I think things are going to get better. I think what this kind of does do for them, though, is, college football, especially Colorado right now, a lot of these kids are getting these NIL deals, and, they have all this fame and whatnot brought on them, especially at that university right now. And I think right now this is more of a humbling moment. Like, you got to play the full 4. You can't come out there and play one half, think that you're the best team in the world, and then dog it in the second half like they did. I think it's just kind of a humbling moment, and it's something that Dion will take and teach these kids, like, hey, we didn't complete our job out there. So I think it could end up being a very good thing for Colorado. Well, I mean, I didn't think they were going to win more. I mean, nobody thought they were going to win more than 3 games this year, as they didn't win any last year. And I kept on saying they're going to go 7-5 after they won those first 2 games of the year. And maybe they go 6-6 now. I don't know. I mean, I just didn't expect them to lose to Stanford.
I was looking at the schedule after last night, and I totally agree. I think last week kind of was an example. Shadir Sanders is a talented football player.
Oh, yeah.
Kind of disagreed with like the end of the game where you beat Arizona State, like you going straight to the student section, everything like that. Not a monumental program victory. And I think we've kind of seen this pattern where they're celebrating every single victory like this is a huge win. And in reality, it is. The team won a game last year. It's just having positive vibes there in general. I think they're excited for that. I do believe in the Coach Prime hype. I do believe that he is just one of those guys where people want to come out and play football for him. He's just one of those coaches, one of those energies. He's going to get the best out of kids. And I think he's going to get some of the best kids in the country. I think the biggest thing is you kind of got to look down the road, 2-3 years is really now that he's at the bigger program, he's got the big time money, the spotlight. It's going to take 2-3 years to really see the chance of, Colorado pulling off a 9-3, a 10-2 season. I
Yeah,
think, I think,
absolutely.
I think he brought a lot of talent from a very talented Jackson State program. And I think you can see that there's a lot of kids that get overlooked at a lower level that can play ball. But I think this is one of those humbling moments where, hey, you're good, but you're not good enough yet. And I think it's just going to be we're playing big time ball now. We're playing on the top level. So just because you were a superstar, at the Division II level, hey, this is primetime television now. You got to step up. You got to play. I think these past 2 weeks, even with a victory in there, are a little more humbling, and they're kind of finding their ground. With that being said, I don't think 6-6 is out of the question for them. I would not be surprised to see them, nab 3 wins out of these next 5, get to a bowl game. And I think if they get to a bowl game, that is going to be a huge recruiting ground for them and a huge step that, hey, last year we won a game. This year we made a bowl. What do you want? You want to be part of this process and see what we do next.
Yeah, can't agree more. That's kind of where my thought process is with Colorado at this point. And there's going to be more talent coming in. Obviously, the recruitment's not going to go away. People want to play for Coach Prime. They see all this stuff, and because the team is so heavily covered, even a couple of weeks ago when Travis Hunter was out with his liver laceration, it was also just kind of want to say it was great to see him back on the field, and he was having a great game offensively yesterday. Not sure if he did play the defensive side of the ball too much. I really didn't pay attention. But didn't have the sound on at all. Just kind of was watching the game without any sound. But it was good to see him back. But yeah, they're going to continue to get recruits. And when he was out with that liver laceration, Coach Prime said something along the lines to him in a text message saying, hey, rest up, because he wanted to come and play the following week after they got blown out. He wanted to play against USC really bad. And he said, no, rest up. I love you. Like, it's not about your health is a lot more important. Your future is a lot more important because I know how talented you are. I love you. Don't come and play this game. We're not going to have you out there. Just sit there and get healthy. So when you have a coach who's sitting there kind of saying, it's a game still. Like, yeah, it affects them, but it's just a game. You kind of want to come and play with that mentality because, for a lot of these coaches, and you can see it in that Florida documentary that came out this year, like, it's not just a game. It's more than that for some of these coaches, and to at least have that humility side, see the human side of everything, like, it's good to see. So the recruits are going to keep coming. It's going to be a great organization. It's going to be a great university to go forward, like, in terms of years to come. I wouldn't be surprised to see them be a college football playoff team in the coming seasons. But yeah, humbling loss for them in what was a wild, crazy double overtime game against Stanford.
Yeah, can completely agree. And I do think that he is just one of those coaches where your biggest benefit when you're recruiting kids is, getting it in that living room. And it's not just about the kid, it's about the family. I think he's one of those guys that can walk into a family's living room and earn that parent's trust. And those parents don't want to say influence the person. The parents are able to say, like, I really think that's the guy you need to go with. That's your mentor.
Yeah, absolutely. With that, we also did have a big Thursday game that ended up being really dramatic and wild. Maybe not a big game, but two schools that are notable that have been up there before, West Virginia and Houston. I didn't watch the game. I was at work when this game was going on. We got a kid in the background, so Ross's child there. But yeah, West Virginia and Houston, wild game, wild ending. You see Houston's up late in the game. West Virginia gets the ball, scores a touchdown with 14 seconds left, and it was a crazy play for them to score a touchdown on. Houston gets the ball back. All they could do is throw up a Hail Mary. They throw up a Hail Mary. It gets batted down right into the arms of a Houston wide receiver. Houston wins the game 41-39. If you have not seen the highlights for this game, please go check it out. And that's a big loss for West Virginia. They were a 4-1 football team, 2-0 in conference this year. The only other team that's in the Big 12 right now that is undefeated is Oklahoma. So they had a shot at being 3-0 in the Big 12 with Oklahoma. Like, would they compete with Oklahoma for the Big 12 championship? Would they be better than Texas? I don't know, but it would have been fun to see them still be undefeated in that aspect, be 5-1 and be a ranked team. But a dramatic, crazy loss. Houston gets, I just couldn't believe my eyes when I saw it. I saw it at like midnight on my lunch break. I was like, what just happened here?
See, this is such a hard thing for me because my whole family, huge John Denver fans, love take me home, country roads. One of the greatest traditions in college football. Such a bad beat.
Yeah.
And honestly, the worst beat of that is if you watched with 12 seconds left, the West Virginia quarterback waving goodbye to the crowd. Bye, shut your mouth. That guy's gonna have a rough week. I'm just saying that all-time bad beat, even worse beat on that. That in most situations, you can go ahead, you can do that, you can celebrate, and this is that 1 out of 99 or 1 out of 100 that, well, you're gonna have a rough week on social media, and people, and you know what, kind of deserve it here.
Yeah. Yeah. We see it all the time when something like that happens late in a game. You think it's over, but it's never over. There has to be like numerous films of stuff like that happening, and it just coming back in their face really fast, really hard. So yeah, that he's going to be wearing it all week long, definitely.
Unfortunately, it's just one of those clips that 10 years down the road, people are going to pull up the wave.
So that was Hudson Clement who did that. So
yeah, the West Virginia's quarterback got the touchdown, about 12, 13 seconds on the clock, if I'm remembering correctly. And they focused on him on the sideline, and he was just waving bye-bye to the Houston student section, only for that to happen on literally the exact next play.
Gotcha. So their other quarterback here, Garrett Green, must have gotten hurt in that game. I did not see how he ended up.
Correction, it was Garrett Green who did get hurt, and then Garrett Green, after, because I guess they may have cheered when he got hurt, came out of the game. That was his moment of him doing his wave, bye, we still got you, and then never mind.
Okay, I got you. Because I seen that it was a different quarterback who threw the touchdown pass than what the starter was, but like I didn't have the full details. I just kind of wanted to bring it to light what happened in this game, just because it's a game where you got to go check out the highlights. We see we got quite a few viewers out there. I just want to kind of bring it to light before we get into the slate for this morning, as we're doing a morning show here. Please go ahead, comment if you have any questions on YouTube, Facebook, or X now, as they call it. Please go ahead and bring some comments, bring some questions. We love to answer questions as we go through. If you have anything that you want us to talk about, see if I have any knowledge on it and can kind of cover it for you. But yeah, so we'll get into next week's slate now. But before we do that, I wanted to mention, after me and Chris did our show earlier in the week to recap week 6, we talked quite a bit on this show about the college football blue bloods and how the college football basketball blue bloods, I should say, have been making their name for themselves this year. Just they're all being ranked in football, which is not something you see for the schools like Duke, normally not a top 25 team. Kansas, normally not a top 25 team. North Carolina, you see up there sometimes, but I saw a little tidbit that I thought was great for the content that we normally bring here, because we do talk about these college basketball schools all the time that are good in college football. So Duke, Kansas, Kentucky, North Carolina, and UCLA, they're all considered college basketball blue bloods, are all ranked for the first time since the AP poll was created in 1936. It has never happened before that these five college basketball schools, as we like to say, they are not college football schools, have all been ranked. So we have not been crazy with our content and continuing to mention this, as me and the Gerbs like to say all the time. It's crazy to see that these college basketball schools are now excelling in college football this year. And to have five of them ranked in the top 25 right now, it's absolutely wild. And the fact that that kind of stat came out when we talk about it all the time, it blew my mind. I was like, wow, this is as rare as I thought it was.
No, 100% agree. And, just deep diving into it, the thing that they all have in common, it's the coaching. It is the coaching. It is who they have in those programs. And if you look at it, it is the factor that they got the right guy at the right time with the right system to go out, just like we talked about Coach Prime going in that living room, talking with the kid and the parents. It's getting them to buy in. And the biggest, I think the one that stands out the most is Lance Leipold in Kansas. I can't remember
I
the coach.
agree.
I can't remember the coach's name from Kansas. Probably when you and I were end of high school, beginning of going to NIU, was the bigger guy that got him to the Orange Bowl, like the Aqib Talib teams, things like that. They compared his first 3 years at Kansas to Lance Leipold. That was the last time Kansas was really relevant, because you and I
That was Charlie
remember.
Rice was there.
It was prior to Charlie Weiss, because you and I got
Yeah,
to experience Charlie Weiss and Jane Christ, ex Notre Dame quarterback, coming to NIU and
yeah.
NIU winning those games.
That was one of the games where we didn't leave at halftime. So,
Yeah, but I when I looked into it, it really comes down to their coaching. Where Lance Leipold probably is one of the most underrated head coaches in the coach or in the country currently. And when I looked back at, I believe his name is like Mangiano, something like that. The last time they were relevant and were making Orange Bowls, things like that, out of the Big 12, he had Lance Leipold has already won as many games as that guy did in his first 3 seasons. Lance Leipold still got like 8 games to go.
wow. Yeah, that's crazy. That's crazy stats. That's good little notes. I know you said you got some spark notes. So, good. I was gonna mention right there with you, that I think Kansas is the most impressive just because even though they got blown out against Texas, they lost 40 to 14 2 weeks ago. In a game that we thought they would keep close, but they're without their star quarterback Jalen Daniels right now, and Daniels did not play last week either. And they found a way to control the game, run the ball. They scored 51 points against a very good UCF team. They're not a chump school. They play good football there. Um, and Kansas went and blew them out of the water, scoring 51 points with a quarterback who only threw for 91 yards. It's it's got to be within the coaching to win games like that, control the ball, control the clock like that. And for them to have gone out there and dominate like they did, if you saw my article, we'll talk about it later. Kansas, I have them covering this week against Oklahoma State. Um, and they're going to be without Daniels again. And I don't think it matters just because the coaching is there. Yeah, Texas just has too much talent. Like you got to do a little bit more, but Kansas, they stayed in that game. It wasn't a 40 to 14 game. The score looked a lot worse than the football game was. So, I said if Daniels was out there, Kansas would have beat Texas. And then the following week, Texas ended up playing against losing to Oklahoma last week. So, I think Kansas would be looking at a shot at the Big 12 with being up there with Oklahoma if Daniels was there. And for them to have come out and played the way they did last week, I hope that continues this week when they play OK State.
Oh, 100%. And I think there's a lot of teams out there that are still struggling, in year 3 of their rebuilds, that are regretting that they missed on Leipold.
Yeah. I mean, I'll say right now, I mean, we do talk a lot of Notre Dame normally because me and DaGerbs are both Notre Dame fans. But
Yeah.
something that
Um,
we're kind of like heading into with Notre Dame playing USC today, it's Marcus Freeman's going to be in year 3 next year. And if year 3 isn't good, there's no year 4 for him. So it's kind of one of those things where, like you might have a little bit more time at a school like Kansas. But this is going to be a kind of a thing where you look, that coach might be the next guy lined up for a job like Notre Dame because Notre Dame isn't succeeding in terms of on the field play, despite the recruiting being really good.
100%. Honestly, I would relate it to when we got Brian Kelly out of Cincinnati.
Yeah.
Brian Kelly went, worked his ass off in Cincinnati, got them to being a program. He was the guy in line. I 100% believe if he continues on the trajectory he's on, Lance Leipold is one of those guys that is going to be looked at for a big time job, for a big time program. And like I said, there's probably a lot of programs currently that are going, how did we miss on that?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and with that, we'll kind of get into the slate for this coming day. It's so different doing it on a Saturday. I'm not used to it. As we're competing against College Game Day right now. I do have it on, but I also have some Euro qualifiers on as I am a soccer guy.
I got it in the background too, and Wesley keeps watching Pat McAfee like crazy.
So. Yeah. Well, that's a smart kid. So this week, obviously, the big game. I mean, there's quite a few of them, but the biggest one that everyone's talking about, Oregon and Washington. The Pac-12 this year is the conference for quarterbacks. We got 2 very good ones today in Bo Nix and Michael Penix Jr. I don't know what to do with this game. I'm going to bet on it, but I'm not putting it out there for other people because I just want to be even more excited to watch this game. So I want to put a little sprinkle on it. I have sat here and said on this show for numerous weeks, I think Washington's the best team in the country. And then they kind of looked meh against Arizona. And I kind of sat there and started scratching my head, put up 24 points, I know Penix is up there for the Heisman, but there's one thing that Penix has failed at, and it's playing in some of these bigger games where he just hasn't been able to show that same stability that he shows sparks of greatness all the time, but these bigger games have got to him. Is he going to be ready for Oregon today and what Oregon brings? Because Oregon's not no chump defense.
No, 100%. And I think this actually goes beyond just Oregon versus Washington. Both of these quarterbacks are being labeled as blue chips for the upcoming draft. Personally, I don't see enough to take one of these guys as like your foundational, like throw plug right in the lineup. Maybe draft, they sit for a while, develop. There can be, serviceable quarterbacks. I think today you're going to get your answer out of the 2 of them. If they can do that, if they can step up in the big moment, especially when it's head to head. I think whoever comes out on top today is going to be the person that kind of defines himself as maybe being the real deal. But I also agree with, Penix has great games. I don't know if he's been tested enough, and this is really the test of you flash every single week, you look great weekly. I think this is going to be the test. Are you the guy though?
Yeah, and the big thing that I kind of look at with this game too is there is a difference. I mean, both these teams are good defensively, but Oregon is very, very good defensively. So that's where I kind of see the edge when, the more I pay attention to Oregon. I mean, the last few weeks, I think they've given up 6, and 10. So they gave up 6 against Stanford, 6 against Colorado, and we know what Colorado could do to put up points. And 10 against Hawaii. And they've scored 42, 55, 81 points, 38 points this year. They don't ever have a problem scoring. They don't give up a lot of yards passing. They do give up a little bit on the ground, but, They don't give up the passing yards, which is going to be big for Michael Penix today. And that's how they're going to have to win the game, is by passing the football. They can't control the ground game and win this football game because Oregon's going to score too quickly, too much, too often. And that was kind of what we said a couple of weeks ago when Oregon played Colorado, was they'll punch you in the mouth right away. And if you're not ready for it, you're not coming back.
It's plain and simple. Bo Nix has basically started more games than anybody ever in college football. after playing this long, Bo Nix is going to do Bo Nix things as an experienced veteran quarterback. He's gonna put points on the board. He's gonna lead the team down the field. What I'm interested to see is if Washington can exploit the run game, if they can get that going, if they can keep the ball out of his hands. If you can get the run game moving, you can take time of possession away from Bo Nix, where if you give him the ball all day, he's going to put 70 points on the board. We know he's going to put 70 points. If you can get the run game going, tick tock on the clock, keep it going, less chances for him to have the ball. I think it's going to be a close game, but I think if they can exploit that and they can get to that, you're going to have a good game. And I can see Washington coming out on top with Michael Penix also throwing the ball too. But I think if you can keep that time of possession more on your side and exploit the run game, like you said, Oregon's run defense, not the best. But if you can just keep the clock rolling, keep moving it along, I think there's a really good chance for Washington in there to get this game.
Yeah, it's going to be an exciting game. It might be the game of the year so far in terms of just watchability. I mean, I know Notre Dame and Ohio State was a big one in terms of the hype around it and whatnot. I mean, you did have it with Colorado for a little bit, but that was just a different story of why there was hype. But in terms of like actual head-to-head game, big game, we're out here. It's in Chicago right now. It's rained for 3 days. It's going to rain for another 3 more days. It's football weather out here. And you're kind of getting that football feel like, okay, these are when the games really matter. This is when it's going to really get to see who's the college football playoff favorite. Because I think the winner of this game is going to be the team that probably goes to the college football playoff, depending what happens in the Pac-12 championship game, because I don't think that USC could beat either of these teams. This is going to be fun to watch. I'm super excited to see what Bo Nix does. Super excited to see what Michael Penix does. My buddy Fat Zach, big friend of the show, just said Penix for Heisman. So we'll see we'll see about that, because today's the day that he's really got to go out there and prove it. It's going to be a fun game. I couldn't be more excited to watch any other game today. And I'm a Notre Dame fan, and I hate USC more than any other school out there. And, I'm not even as excited for that game, but that's just because of the state of Notre Dame.
Yeah, no, 100%. And, this is one of those things that you and I have talked off camera about this before, where just what an unfortunate season and timing for the Pac-12.
Yeah.
As Wesley pops in. What an unfortunate time where this is the year, and it's gonna disband. Just such unfortunate timing that they literally have some of the best teams, the best football that we've seen in quite a while in college football, and it's just gonna end up being all for nothing in the end. And the only thing I'm hoping for the Pac-12 is I'd like to see a Pac-12 team get into the playoff. My worst fear is in these coming weeks they all play each other, and them eating each other alive and just taking each other out.
Yeah, absolutely. And that very well could happen. The one thing that's going to have to happen for USC to be one of those teams would be for them to play defense. With that, will kind of flow into that being the second biggest game of the day, Notre Dame USC. I've gone through every emotion I can with Notre Dame, from just being on top of the world, thinking this team's really got it going, like they're going to be the shit. They got Sam Hartman. He's playing his ass off. He looks like a Heisman quarterback. And then the Ohio State game happened, and I sat there and I cried. I even put a video out there of me crying because I was so upset and just brokenhearted that day. And then getting the win against Duke, when I'm sitting there doubting they're going to have the ability to win the game late, and they find a way with the Audric Estime, I'm like, all right, this is when it all comes together. Then the last week happens where they look completely unprepared in the second half. They just let Louisville take control of the game. And for the first time in a long time, and I know DaGerbs did the same thing, I shut off the Notre Dame game early because I was just like, this is what I'm used to now. I'm used to being hurt. I'm used to seeing this. And I just didn't have the care in the world. I wasn't crying. I just was like, acceptance. Like, this is what Notre Dame is. So I've gone through all the way from being on top of the world to being on the bottom of the world sad. I'm still kind of sad and upset. Today could be a day where I get back to above medium feels. I do have tickets for senior day this year, so I'd like to go and enjoy the game. Today could be a big step in towards me enjoying that game. But Notre Dame USC today, the emotions are going to be high. Notre Dame's going to really have to control the ball, and that's the only way I see them winning is them controlling the ball on the offensive side the whole game. They have to dominate the clock. I know they did it last week, and it didn't work out in their favor. But they got to control the ball, and they also got to be not afraid to lose at the same time, which could be really tough for them to do when you're trying to just control the ball.
1 second, Baba. It was a mail truck. So I think you yeah, it was a mail truck. So you and I were texting before this game last week, and I told you that I was nervous to the point where I was even thinking of taking the Louisville spread at the 6.5. Well, I took Wesley out last week. We got back in. I turned on that game for about 30 seconds and turned the TV right back off. With that being said, this is a huge game for Notre Dame. This is our season. If there is anything to be happy about, it is that we beat that team from the West Coast. And we finally got who we thought was going to be the guy at quarterback to come in and lead this team. This is a legacy game for Sam Hartman. Yeah. Where it's plain and simple, legacy game. The season is not going how we plan the season to go. But we will forgive and we will remember the day that Sam Hartman threw 6 touchdown passes and beat USC at home.
And that very well might happen, as we already stated, and it's been stated numerous times on this show before. USC's defense is no good. It's really bad. They're really bad on defense, which is what gives me a little bit of hope for Notre Dame. But the bad news is for Notre Dame is Notre Dame doesn't tackle, and USC has studs everywhere. I mean, they are going to be lights out in terms of their offense. I know that USC may be missing a star player of theirs on the offensive side of the ball. True freshman Branch. He's had a pretty good start to the season. I think he's had 2 touchdown catches, 2 like punt returns or kick returns for touchdowns. But he's been out the last 2 games, most likely going to be out today. But that's not the big deal because there's weapons all over the place for USC. And they also have the reigning Heisman, Caleb Williams, who's going to be the number 1 pick in the NFL draft next year. I mean,
and you mentioned that Notre Dame can't tackle.
Yeah.
Today we are probably playing the one player that is the hardest person to tackle in the country. So
yeah,
if plain simple, if we allow him to extend plays and we cannot get him down or pressure, it's going to be a long night. But if we can, first of all, we need to make sure that we have 11 men on the field. If we can get to that start, then I'm open to anything happening. But I do think legacy game for Sam Hartman. I think it could rebound, save the season. We've already kind of talked about, Marcus Freeman next year could be on the hot seat if things don't go well. I think this could be a stepping stone. Obviously, we always just want to beat that team. We have to beat that team. And I think today could be a huge day for Sam Hartman to go out and get his big Irish victory that he needs.
Yeah, and I mean, a big part of that, too, I don't think it has to be really on Sam Hartman. Notre Dame came in this year, they kept on saying how they're the best offensive line in the country. Joel kept saying they're the best offensive line in the country. They've been terrible. They've been awful. They have not been a good offensive line at all. They're not helping the run game. I think Audric Estime has to get more carries than what he's been given the last few weeks. I don't understand that, why he's been taken out of the game. He's a monster. He knows how to break tackles. He has getaway speed for a big boy. I mean, he kind of reminds you of Jerome Bettis in terms of his size and the way he looks. I mean, he looks like he could possibly be the next Derrick Henry in terms of if and when he goes to the NFL. You got to give him the football. And if he's running all over USC, which he can because USC's not very good on defense, that's how you're going to win the game. Notre Dame has to control the clock. They have to have the ball 40-20 in this one. Keep the ball out of Caleb Williams' hands as much as possible. It might happen it might be 40-20, but USC's still dropping 42 points because they score that quickly when Notre Dame's not tackling. But if there's anything for this team to play for, if this game doesn't, and I think Marcus Freeman said it earlier this week, if this game doesn't give you the stomach tingle still after losing 2 games already this year, then you're not a competitor and you shouldn't be on the field. Like, they have to come out there and win this game. Marcus Freeman needs this win because he needs to go to a good bowl game. Still, last year they won a good bowl game, and you thought that was going to be kind of like, okay, we're stepping up. If they go 10-2 to finish the year, they're going to get a good bowl game. Maybe we play LSU and beat Brian Kelly, as me and the DaGerbs keep on asking for. But this is huge for them. And if Notre Dame's not willing to step up to the challenge today, it's going to be really hard for me to even go to that senior day game because I'm not going to want to appreciate this class. I'm just not.
Yeah. I'm just going to speak vibes in the air. You got your ND gear. I got mine. Wesley's running around in his. I'm just going out on a limb. Vibes high today. I'm thinking 38-34 Notre Dame.
Yeah, I haven't looked at the over-under on that game yet, but I definitely want to check it out because I'm actually going to look at it right now because the more I think about it, I might want to go with the over in this one. So
we got that perfect Midwest weather going into a game in South Bend. Vibes are high. Let's just go for it. Let's just believe that we can get it done.
Yeah, absolutely. So 60.5. That's an interesting number, but I think the weather may be playing into that as well. So that is something to look at. But yeah, we'll see what happens. With that, we'll kind of move forward with another big game for the week. What do we got coming up next? North Carolina and Miami. This show, Ross, I don't know how many times you've seen me and Chris and how much we talk about Drake May here, but we love that man. I don't know why, but we're big Drake May fans. And North Carolina last week looked really damn good as they beat Syracuse 40-7. Drake May had a great game. He's starting to come into his own. The team looks better and better every single week. And they're going to play a Miami team that's undefeated. Oh, no, sorry, they're not undefeated because they decided not to kneel the football last week. When they could have won the game, they decided to run a play and fumble the ball and then give up a touchdown and lose the game. So this should be a matchup that's 2 undefeated teams in the ACC, but instead we got a one-loss Miami team who's still ranked number 25, but North Carolina's ranked 12th coming into this. I haven't watched a lot of Hurricanes football this year. I've watched quite a bit of North Carolina. Overall, I think North Carolina is going to be the better team in this game. I think that Miami is going to have a really hard time coming into this game mentally after last week. You have to you blame it on the coaches, definitely for Miami last week, and you have to feel like the players feel let down by the coaches a little bit coming into this.
Oh, 100%. There's multiple articles, there's multiple videos from last week. The Miami bench of players sitting on the sideline as they line up in formation, and all the players going, "What the hell are we doing?"
Yeah,
and then the players are spotting this out. That what are our coaches doing right now? Only to have a disaster on the next play. My biggest concern for this game is if Miami could shake that.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's the coaching staff shaking it. I think it's the players, and I think it's the mentality, everything, knowing that you should be undefeated. You should be in the conversation still going into this game against North Carolina, because it's one of those things where it's a big game. At least a week ago, it would have been a big game if you get that win. Where you win this, do you move into the top 10? Do you start to get more into the conversation moving forward? And it's essentially all for nothing. I think it's going to come down to Miami mentality. Can they shake it? Because Drake May is a stud, and he's going to sling the ball left and right as he's done all year. I think he's only going to continue to get better, and I don't think it's a surprise that it's Mac Brown as his coach. You can trace these quarterbacks back 20 years to us watching Vince Young at Texas. That it just Vince Young, Colt McCoy, all these college quarterbacks all have one thing in common, and it's their coach.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. It's going to be. I mean, I really don't, like I said, I haven't watched Miami. I don't really know much about this team. All I saw is what happened last week. I couldn't even. I was kind of surprised to see Miami was 4-0 and they weren't getting on my TV more, just because there's always that clamoring for the U of old to come back, so that they have those big games, Catholics versus convicts and stuff like that. And it just seems like Miami hasn't had that consistent ability to be in the conversation. So I was kind of surprised to see that coming into last week. They were 4-0 before they blew that game. But that's the story here. Miami does it does look like they do a very good job defensively in terms of their rush defense. They only allow 58.2 yards per game rushing, which is really good. They do give up the passing yards, though, to lesser quarterbacks, which could be their downfall today. But yeah, I mean, it's going to be their ability to put up points as well. I think when they're playing a team like Georgia Tech last week, you're kind of surprised that a team that seems to be good, their quarterback Van Dyke seems to really have things, seems to be a very solid quarterback. You're kind of surprised they didn't put up more points so that they weren't even in a situation where it was a one-score game. I think you gotta, if North Carolina is going to put up points on you, so if you can't put up points on North Carolina's defense, it's going to be a long day for them.
100%. And like you said, with that rush defense for Miami, the biggest thing is going to be if Drake May can extend the play, roll out of the pocket, use his legs like he's been able to do in the first several weeks of the season, just to extend the play, make plays. He has the arm. So it's going to be, if they can get to him, I could see it being close. I could see it being closer. I could see it being interesting. If they're not able to do that and Drake May is able to extend the play and just use his arm, I think they're done for.
Yeah, absolutely. Up next, we have another ranked versus ranked game in UCLA versus Oregon State. More of that Pac-12 football. A lot of Pac-12 teams are being talked about because, honestly, that's the conference to be in this year, and despite there going to be no one in it next year. But yeah, so far Oregon State's been very impressive with old Clemson quarterback DJ Ukulele. As me and Chris always make up a different name for him every single week.
Just DJU. DJU. DJ Unga Bunga.
Yeah. So, but Oregon State's looked pretty good. UCLA doing UCLA things with Chip Kelly still. Chip Kelly hasn't really been able to get over with the big games. He's had solid teams at UCLA. They go 9-3, 8-4 every year. They're always up there. They seem to always be competitive with USC in that game at the end of the season. But during the year, they seem to have a letdown game. And this kind of seems like going into Oregon State that this is going to be that day for them where they're kind of let down. The Beavers are playing great football. Their only loss was to Washington State a couple of weeks ago, which is another really good team. And that's what the Pac-12 is, just a bunch of good football teams. It's going to be tough for UCLA to go into Oregon State and get the win today.
100% agree, but also my eyes are on this game today just for the significance where I think it's going to be a fun game. Um, Reading up in on this game, I don't know if you were aware, the last time these two teams were ranked playing a meaningful game in October, the two biggest offensive weapons on each team were Oregon State's current head coach was the quarterback, and running backs coach Deshaun Foster was the running back for UCLA in 2001.
Oh, wow. That's interesting.
It is this game has been so irrelevant for so long that it's there. There's a little bit of magic there, and it's even cooler that the coaches of these teams were the guys that played in the game the last time this was relevant.
Yeah, and this game's going to go away now too, so they won't be playing each other much more because of the conference realignment. So last shot at it as well, and that's just I think that's kind of the story of the Pac-12 this year in general. Is you're seeing a lot of games that normally don't get a lot of traction, and now there's a lot of attraction on everything going on in this conference this year, for its last year of probably its existence. Unless something crazy happens. But
which is just super unfortunate because you and I have already talked about it. I'm a classic conference alignment guy. I like the old school rivalries. I like it the old way. I don't like the super conferences, and it's just unfortunate that they're going to disband and break up, and then this is the year they potentially have the best football they've had in 30 years.
Yeah, I mean it's absolutely insane. When me and Chris got with the powers that be at OnTap Sports, to try and do this and try and give them more college football coverage and give more of a national aspect instead of just our, we have a Notre Dame channel and NIU channel. Those are the two big ones that we cover, because it's mainly Chicago based. When we came at them with this idea, we didn't think we were going to be sitting here talking about the Pac-12 as much as we have this year. We didn't think that these were going to be the teams to watch, but it's been far and above the best conference. The SEC is down this year. It's not fun to watch the SEC, really. I mean, Georgia's just Georgia. Alabama's not fun to watch. LSU's trash. The Big Ten has a lot of teams. It's going to get a lot of fun. I think next week's when we really get into the big games with the Big Ten. I mean, I don't even know if I have any Big Ten games I'm really interested in this week besides Wisconsin and Iowa. I mean, Ohio State should blow out Purdue, but the Pac-12 is where it's at right now. Those are where the best schools are. Even the ACC's up there this year, it seems, but the Pac-12 literally has taken the college football world by storm. And until we get some of these bigger games like next week, I think it's Penn State, Ohio State from the other conferences, you're constantly going to see this because the Pac-12 has everybody. There's just good game after good game every week.
Even the bottom tier teams in the Pac-12, like your Arizona's, the traditional where they're not, the record isn't going to speak for what the team is. If you go over their past couple of weeks, even Arizona is playing great football. They're giving teams a run for their money. They're losing the game, but they're making it interesting. They're giving teams a run for their money. You have the schools that traditionally you're not used to performing in the Pac-12, even though the record doesn't back it up. If you actually watch the game, all those teams in that conference are playing good football, competitive football.
Yeah, it absolutely, because I mentioned it earlier, like Arizona playing the way they did against Washington kind of gave me the doubts on Washington, but Arizona did the same thing with USC. I mean, that's just kind of seems to be who they are. But yeah, that's literally that. This conference is crazy, and today's going to be another make or break day in it for sure with all these big games, and even USC playing against Notre Dame, a non-conference game. It's just the good games just keep on happening with this conference.
You have all eyes on Pac-12 today.
Yeah. With that, kind of roll into some of these other games. Not as much to talk about with them, but I think it's worth mentioning. We got Tennessee versus Texas A&M today at Tennessee. Tennessee had a bad loss a couple of weeks ago to Florida. People kind of got a little bit more hyped up on Florida after that game. And then Florida had a bad loss like a week later against Kentucky, I believe. So kind of like that thing where, we haven't seen the best of the SEC this year. This game has the capability of being a good game. It's probably the best game in that the SEC has going on today. Just because Texas A&M is a tough school. Does Tennessee have an opportunity? Are they going to blow another big one at home?
I think the better question is, are we going to see Jimbo mismanage a $10 million contract yet again?
Yeah. I mean, so far Texas A&M hasn't been what they wanted it to be when Jimbo ended up taking that job. Just kind of skywriting it out of Florida State, saying I'm going here and I'm going to make big things here. I mean, even when they played Bama, you had the 12th man, and it didn't matter. Alabama looked the best they did all season, when they haven't been impressive at all. So it's just kind of like, what's going on there? But yeah, this is a chance to go out there and beat a ranked team on the road for Texas A&M. So it's a huge opportunity, but I really don't know what to think, because I think it really matters what Jalen Middleton we end up getting out of Tennessee, because it seems like he shows flashes of greatness and then there's a lot of bad. So, and I meant Joe Milton, not Middleton.
I think I like to refer to Joe Milton is a coin flip quarterback, where it's a coin flip every week. What are you going to get?
Yeah.
If he's on, he's going to sling the ball for 350 yards all over the place. Like, it's great. You can throw a football 100 yards. We've all seen the videos on Twitter, everything that you can launch it. It doesn't matter if you throw it 100 yards, if it's 20 yards over your guy's head when he's wide open down the field.
Yeah. It's just, I don't know. Tennessee's such a weird school, just in general, because when we were kids, they were always a big time school. They were always good. And then it seems like for the last 20 years, they've sat at this middle tier of trying to be relevant, but mostly irrelevancy.
Peyton Manning, Casey Clausen, in the truthful thing for any college football fan is, it's like one of those classic power programs where college football is just better when Tennessee is good. I don't know if Tennessee is good or if they're just getting benefit of the doubt in the schedule. You thought they could handle Florida. Florida exposed them. Terrible game. Where I don't know what the vibes are for tonight. I could see Tennessee winning this game. I could also see Jimbo having a statement game and going into Knoxville and then running the table.
Yeah, I mean, this is another game that I stayed away from in terms of betting. Like, it seems like, Tennessee at home, 3-point spreads, something they should cover. But at the same time, I don't know. I really don't know what to expect, because I really haven't. It's been hard to bet in general this year in college football as the weeks go on, because each week just seems to get stranger and stranger. Tennessee losing at home is a good possibility, but we'll just kind of have to let it play out itself. That's why I'm staying away from it in general. But yeah, it's a big opportunity for Jimbo Fisher. We'll see how that goes. That's another 2:30 game, the CBS game of the day for the SEC. We also got Missouri versus Kentucky. I'm a big Missouri fan this year. I came into the year, I kept on saying that I really like Missouri. And then last week happened where Missouri finally lost a game, in a game that they should have won against LSU. They just blew it late. They just weren't the best team in the fourth quarter. They were ahead the whole way going into the fourth quarter, and then LSU kind of ran away with it late, unfortunately. But still a really good football team this year. Now they get to play Kentucky. I believe this game is at Kentucky. Kentucky is a really good football team, and this is really a game for both these teams to still stay within the conversation to possibly play for a conference championship. And that's what the main story with this game is going to be. You don't expect it from either school, but it is a possibility here. Missouri will get Georgia later on in the year, so that'll be their chance. I think Kentucky already played Georgia last week and got blown out. So We'll really have to see if Kentucky can rebound from that. And really, it might give us a better idea that Kentucky is probably if Kentucky goes out there and manhandles this team, we're probably going to say Kentucky's the second best team in the SEC East, which means Georgia is not going to have any problem running through that conference the rest of the year, as we expect, since they did not really get any of the what we would call tougher schools out of the West in their schedule this year.
Yeah, 100%. I think it's going to be a good SEC game overall. And for the first time in a long time, it's one of those things that kind of makes you laugh, just because I feel like the SEC is kind of like the Pac-12, where there's good teams in there, but they just eat each other alive. Where at the end of the year, some of the best SEC teams, I'm not going to be surprised to see them sitting at an 8-4, 9-3, when it's usually a team that's 11-1, 10-2, just because they're all running into each other, eating up. I think the key to the game, the reason Kentucky's playing decent football, and I think it's because the acquisition of Devin Leary. I mean, at NC State, looked like a pro quarterback. Jumping into the SEC because he wanted a bigger challenge over there. I think just better football overall for him, but really it's one of those games that's kind of in the background for me during the day to day. But I mean, I think you're gonna see a good game, but I think it just kind of falls into that middle tier where the SEC is not what it's used to be this year. Everything's gonna run through Georgia. Everything's gonna run through Bama.
Yeah,
and everyone else below them is gonna eat each other alive.
Yeah, I mean, and that's kind of what we've seen so far. I mean, I'm very critical of LSU, but LSU's, I think, 3-1 in conferences. They've already played 4 conference games this year, and you're sitting there saying LSU's bad, but they're not great. But it's just all these competitive games, so that's kind of just where we are with it. And Brian Kelly doesn't get big wins, so.
But I also am not going to be surprised moving forward with all the conference realignment and who they have coming in with them now, that if this just kind of becomes the standard, where maybe there's one or two. Obviously, I think it could change yearly, who the team is that ends up being on the one or two that end up being on top, that you expect them to go like 11-1, something like that. But I think the rest of the pack is going to fall in that 8-4, 9-3 range, because they're all just going to beat up on each other.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it is going to be another game that's kind of sitting there in the background. We did have one more game that we kind of wanted to talk about before we get into the betting portion of the show, and that is a Big Ten matchup today, probably the best Big Ten matchup on the slate. But it's two teams that aren't ranked right now, in Iowa and Wisconsin. Both of them 4-1 coming in this game. Iowa's 2-1 in conference. Wisconsin's 2-0 in conference. Here's the thing for me. I don't know. Again, Ross, me and DaGerbs are not friends with head coach Brian Ferentz at Iowa. He's gone out there and he's just been very critical of college football on tap. He made statements directly at us, as we joke around that he actually watches the show and gives a crap what we have to think. But Iowa's not a very good offensive team. They've lost quarterback Cade McNamara now.
And I think that's the point. Case closed right there. I think Wisconsin today, Coach Ferentz not going to like me either. I don't see it happening today. Honestly, the only thing that would make this game better is if there was some snow.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is always a defensive battle. I mean, that's what Iowa is. They play defense. Wisconsin, they play defense and run the football. And that's literally what we're going to see today. Iowa's going to try and run the football. Whichever team runs the football better is going to win the game. I think Wisconsin's going to be too much to handle. I do have Wisconsin on the betting slate at -9.5. I do see it drop down to 9. So if you get that better number, lock it in. But yeah, I think Wisconsin's going to be too much more. They just have the better quarterback in this game. The defenses, I don't know who's better, honestly. They're both very similar. But Wisconsin should go out there and handle business today. So just kind of wanted to bring that one in there. And with that, we'll go into the betting slate. I told Ross over in New York, they can't bet legally like we can here in Illinois. But I said if he had anything out there to throw in, go ahead. But if you have looked, I did write an article this week on college football for On Tap Sportsnet with my bets, and I was thinking about adding more, but I really don't want to push it after the weeks I've been having. I'm 31-34 on the year now, 3 games below 500, which hurts. It sucks to say because week 0 I was good, week 1 I was good, week 2 was a struggle, week 3 I was good, week 4 I was good, week 5 not good, week 6 awful. So it's starting to get worse and worse as the weeks go on. I thought it'd get easier. It's been a very confusing year for me as I don't know what to make of anything. Hopefully things get a little bit straightened out today. The first one that I kind of put out there that I really liked was Ohio State and Purdue. I got Ohio State minus 19.5. I actually did lock in a better number today. I saw it at minus 18.5, I believe. So I did get it at a lower number, which is good to see. It might have even been 18 now that I think about it. But for me, it's pretty simple. Purdue's not good. Yeah, they blew out U of I a couple weeks ago, but U of I is not even the best school in Illinois. We all know that's Northern Illinois. And we'll see it every year, no matter what the records are.
Yep.
So Purdue blew them out, but Purdue in general last week, they lost to Iowa without a quarterback. Iowa is not a very good team offensively. You should be able to win these games, but Purdue couldn't cover. I don't think that Purdue's even at home is going to be able to contend with Ohio State today. Kyle McCord's finally looking like he's coming into his own after last week. They played a tough Maryland team who they beat by 20. It was a close game most of the way, but the Ohio State defense was too much for Talea Tagovailoa in the second half, and Maryland couldn't stay within the game. And if Maryland, a very good football team, loses by 20, I don't think a very bad football team in Purdue is going to contend with Ohio State. So I locked in Ohio State at minus 19.5.
No, 100% agree. In the past, Purdue has been a trap game for Ohio State. We've seen it several times. That coaching staff isn't there anymore. They're in a rebuild. I just don't see it. I think you even getting the even safer number is great, but I think then at the 19 would have been a winner too.
Yeah, so I got it at 18. I actually had it on 19 on the article as well. So we'll say the number was 19 originally, but I got it at 18, which I'm very excited about that. Another game that I had on my slate that I actually think I got a worse number at now because I got it at minus 3.5, I believe. But we talked about this team earlier when we talked about the Blue Bloods of college basketball. I got Kansas minus 3 versus Oklahoma State. Kansas, again, going to be without quarterback Jalen Daniels or Jaden Daniels. There's a Jalen and a Jaden. There's 2 Daniels quarterbacks out there. One of them's the LSU one. I can't remember. But Daniels, like I said, Kansas would have had a good shot being Texas if he played. Kansas last week ended up playing Central Florida. They ran the ball down their throat. I see that being very similar today for Kansas. Oklahoma State coming off of a big upset victory last week against Kansas State when Oklahoma State's lost the game 33-7 to Southern Alabama. Oklahoma State's not the Oklahoma State that we're used to seeing, so we're going to go ahead and take Kansas with the running game, even though they can't really pass the ball right now. So Kansas minus 3, I locked that one in. We also had a MAC game that I put in there because I haven't had any MACtion in a while. I haven't been betting MACtion. Like here in the state of Illinois, we can't bet on our own teams. We can't bet on Northern Illinois, Northwestern, and U of I. Otherwise, I would be putting probably a lot more NIU bets out there and Northwestern bets out there. But this game here, I saw Eastern Michigan versus Kent State. Kent State having a down year after what was a really good season for them last season. They're getting blown out by teams. They don't look good. They're 0-2 in conference. Eastern Michigan's been very competitive. Got Eastern Michigan here at -8.5. Not a team that I normally would bet on with such a high number, but I really do like Eastern Michigan to go ahead and take care of Kent State this week just because Kent State does not look good at all.
The only thing I don't like about that bet is Eastern Michigan's gray field.
Yeah, it is ugly.
It is the ugliest thing I've ever seen. I don't know who thought that was a great idea. I think it's a great bet. I obviously, as a fellow Maction guy along with you, I follow along Maction. It's once you've experienced it, it's part of you.
Yes.
No, I 100% think that was the way to go. I just hate that when I have to check in on this game for your sake to check on your bet, that I have to look at that stupid gray field.
Fair enough. Another one that I had, a game that we could have talked about in general as one of the better games of the day. We got BYU versus TCU. BYU at +6. I've seen it at +7. I can't remember what I got it at or if I even locked it in yet. There was 2 games on my slate that I have yet to lock in as I was trying to get a better number throughout the day. But BYU +6, I think this is the way to go. And yeah, this was one that I did not lock in because I did see it fall to 5 now that I recall from yesterday. It fell from 6 to 5, so I was getting a lower number, kind of hoping I could get it at 5.5 at the very least now. But I like BYU. I like BYU to win this game, honestly. Money line sprinkle might not be crazy. TCU lost 27-14 to a bad Iowa State team. I do not like Iowa State. I said it in my article. Iowa State has screwed the pooch 2 times this year. And once you screw me 2 weeks in a row, you're no longer on my good list. So them and Purdue are 2 teams that I hate, as well as Iowa. So it's the whole state over there in Iowa. Just not their teams I don't like this year because of what they've done to me betting wise. And for them to go out there and lose to Iowa State, who's looked as bad as they have and give up 27 points, I just do not see this ending well for TCU against a very tough BYU team. So give me BYU +6.
I don't know about you, but I have like that classic dumb brain where I just always think of the past with some teams where
Yeah.
it doesn't have to be current. I just always associate that BYU plays good football, they play good against good teams, and they win.
I honestly say I feel like a lot of the time when I do bet and I don't look at teams so much, it's just like, oh, this seems like a good bet, and I don't do any research for it. BYU is one of those teams where it's like, yeah, this looks like a good bet. Like,
Yeah.
just 'cause it's
You see BYU on the schedule playing someone, and you're just like, yeah, I think that's the way to go today, because you think of players that haven't been there in a decade, but you just associate that, oh, they were good 10 years ago. They're
yeah,
probably still good now and could handle this game.
yeah, and that's kind of what happens a lot. But I did look. I honestly do like BYU quite a bit here, and hopefully, me taking the plus team ends up working out for me. It seems like when I'm taking these plus teams, it's not going in my favor at all. But we'll see. Because I'm not winning too. I haven't been winning with the teams that are the favorites either. Another one that I had. We already talked about it, so we won't go into it. North Carolina and Miami. I got North Carolina at -3.5. Drake May all day. And then 3 other games that I like that, one of them that we also talked about, Wisconsin and Iowa. Got Wisconsin at -9.5. Saw it go down to 9. Got Duke versus North Carolina State. Another interesting ACC game, actually. I have not actually seen the update if Riley Leonard was going to play for Duke. I believe that it was a lot less serious than it looked when he got hurt in that Notre Dame game. So, but I do like Duke either way. They just are the better coach team right now. No disrespect to Dave Doran, former Northern Illinois coach, but I just think Duke's been at another level so far. So I'm going to take the Blue Devils here at -3.
Yeah, and no offense to Coach Dave. We love Coach Dave. Got us to the Orange Bowl. We'll never forget. Personally, I think Dave Doran's one of the most underrated coaches in college football. He's been there a decade now. They've been competitive. He's had great teams, but Mike Elko at Duke, former ND coach, just in general, he's building something special there. Like we were talking about earlier with the college basketball blue bloods, they got something special. I think he's going to continue to have a competitive team, and especially as that conference changes, going through all the realignment stuff. I think they're going to be a competitive team moving forward, and I think they have the right coach. So I agree with Duke today.
Yeah. And I did look really quick here. Riley Leonard is uncertain for today's game, so that number can move around. It could become a North Carolina State win without Riley Leonard, but I think if Leonard's there and he's able to run the ball like he's able to do, Duke should have no problem. I am also seeing really quick when we were talking about that over under for the Notre Dame USC game, they're now saying no rain for the game tonight, so I'm sure the field's going to be a little wet, but overall, it should be clear air for them to do whatever they want to do throwing the football wise. So something to look into if you were looking at that over under. And then the last game that I did have on the slate was Wake Forest plus 1.5 over Virginia Tech. Wake Forest covered for me last week very easily against Clemson, one of the 3 wins that I had, and it was an easy one. Wake Forest and Clemson, neither team even scored until the fourth quarter, basically. So very close game. I had Wake Forest plus 21. I think they lost by like 4 points. It was never even a scare. So I always like betting Wake Forest. I kind of do chalk that up as another thing with Sam Hartman being there before he went to Notre Dame and just the years of watching him dominate in the ACC. So I like Wake Forest here. Virginia Tech hasn't really shown up too much. They do have the Enter the Sandman, which is scary, but Enter the Sandman screwed me earlier this year when I thought it was going to be a big deal. So Wake Forest plus 1.5, and that kind of closes it up for me in terms of the betting segment.
Wake Forest is just another one of those classic programs where even though historically they are not a good football team until Sam Hartman got there, it's just one of those teams you see it and I always think today's just going to be the day.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you all did see, I was sent a message by DaGerbs earlier today because as we know here at College Football on Tap that DaGerbs is undefeated this year. In terms of his upset special. We haven't really made a name for it yet, but he did make a pick. I'm sitting here trying to make sure that I don't make the mistake now because I'm seeing a line of 10.5 for LSU and Auburn tonight, but the Gerbs took Auburn at minus 13. So, or plus 13, I'm sorry. So, Auburn was the Gerbs special pick coming in. He's 6-0, trying to go to 7-0. We'll recap it later. We'll recap it on Monday when he's back. But yeah, that's going to be an interesting one because Auburn doesn't move the ball a lot, but this kid just doesn't lose. So you kind of have to like go with it and throw your money at it because until he loses, I got to keep riding with my boy there. So the Gerbs upset special. He has a video out on our X page. So please go check that out on X and give it a repost, a like. Anything else from you, Ross?
Game I'm gonna watch today, upset alert trap game. I'm thinking I'm not gonna be surprised. Maybe Pittsburgh over Louisville in Pittsburgh at home. I would not be surprised to see Pittsburgh come out of nowhere, give Louisville a run for their money. I know that vibes are high after the Notre Dame game. Wouldn't be surprised to see them come crashing back down to earth though.
Yeah, that's definitely a good observation. I could definitely see that happening. When schools do get big wins, they kind of lose focus and they go and play down to teams that aren't as good. That could be something that we do see here today. So yeah, interesting game there. If Pittsburgh can come out and perform, I don't know what the weather there in Pittsburgh's like, but I know when the weather's bad in Pittsburgh, it normally does favor them because they do like to get down in the trenches.
Yep.
Um,
That's really the only one that really stood out to me on upset alert, trap game potentially.
Well, we'll review that as well on Monday. With that, Ross, thank you so much for joining us here today. Zach, thanks for being in the comments. We had quite a few viewers. I saw we had 9 people watching live at one point, which is awesome. Each episode, me and Chris seem to get higher and higher viewers at one point in our show. So it's kind of cool to see. We like when you guys interact. We'll interact with you, comment back and forth. We'll keep on trying to put some more articles out there for you guys to read. Keep sharing our stuff. We want people to pay attention, watch. We have a lot of fun doing this, and I'm glad that you were able to join me here today, Ross. But with that, hopefully we get a chance to see you again. You're always welcome back. I think it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. This was a lot of fun for me. I know we've been talking about potentially doing something like this for a while, so fun to get it done, do a first trial run, and looking forward to having me back anytime you'd like.
All right, sounds awesome. Once again, thank you. Thanks everyone for watching, the viewers and everything. We're about 35 minutes away from the college football day starting. So everyone get your coffee, eat your breakfast. Let's get this going and make sure that you crack them, have some beers. Have a good day. This was College Football on Tap, brought to you by On Tap Sportsnet.